Hey everyone, it's sysadmin Sean here, and today I want to talk about the purchasing and ordering processes that you may go through as a system administrator. When you're in a situation where you need to order new servers or storage, maybe cloud resources, anything like that that requires you to get a bid or talk to different vendors, get quotes, figure out what the best product is for you. You need to go through a process to do that. And that process usually involves you'll go through and kind of look at the different vendors that are available for the product you're looking at. You'll compare and contrast the pros and cons, and then you will usually pick the vendor that offers you the most benefits without the most cost. So for example, let's say we need to build out our virtual infrastructure. So the first thing we need to do is decide how we're building out our virtual infrastructure. And is this dictated by existing equipment? Are we building a brand new environment? Those are two things that you have to take into account right off the bat. And then the next one is, what's your budget? How much money do you have to spend? Let's say we don't worry about budget right now. We just need to build a new virtual environment. You'll go and probably call a couple of vendors or search a couple of vendors. Maybe you'll go to Dell, maybe you'll go to HP, maybe you'll go to IBM, maybe you'll check out Cisco. There are plenty of options, and you have to just look at them and decide which one's the best for you. Do you want to go full rack servers and a SAN for your virtual infrastructure? Do you want to go FlexPod, which is more of like a high density server cluster and a SAN, or do you want to go hyper converged infrastructure? Do you want to buy your compute and storage in each little node and build a cluster off of that? And there's pros and cons to all of those different decisions. So those different infrastructure choices, you really have to sit down and go, what do I need to build my infrastructure out with? What pieces do I need to work with? And once you figure that out, then you usually start actually reaching out to these vendors. Hopefully you're somewhere that has already done this before and they maybe already have a pre-existing contract with a certain vendor. If not, then you might have to do what's called an RFP and put it out to bid. So an RFP is, you basically write a generic listing of things that you are trying to accomplish and things that the vendor has to meet for your needs. I say generic, and it should really actually be quite detailed. You want to make sure that you're voicing exactly the type of hardware you're looking for, exactly what the needs are. It's for virtualization, exactly what kind of security protocols you're trying to follow, what type of software you're going to be running on this equipment, so that you give the vendor every detail possible to make sure that their product fits your needs or doesn't fit your needs. Because if you just put an RFP out there that says, I need hardware for virtualization, every vendor is going to respond to you and tell you that their servers are good for virtualization, when that's not usually the case. You're going to need to put out there the same thing for your storage. And you need to lay out, I need these storage protocols. It needs to be able to do NFS. It needs to be able to do SMB. It needs to be able to do da-da-da-da-da. And then you'll probably want to wait, if you're doing these split up, to list which vendors you feel like are best suited to tie in together. You've got to think about all these different things. And then comes one of the painful parts. And that is the vendors reaching out to you because you gave them your email address and phone number, because you can't look up their prices online. There are a few places that let you talk to middlemen, essentially is what I call them. They're the people that usually do the sales. So if you buy from Dell, you usually deal with Dell. If you buy certain other places, maybe you deal with them directly, or maybe you deal with an intermediary like CDW or Cincinnati Bell Technologies, or tons of resellers. They're all over the place. They are there to offer you usually an engineer that knows kind of what you're looking to do, so that you don't have to talk directly to Dell, who's really just going to try to sell you something. But sometimes Dell has the good engineers too, so you want to talk with them. And then sometimes your software vendors have engineers that you incorporate. And sometimes your intermediaries offer things like professional services to help you install and manage and configure this equipment. And sometimes your primary vendors offer that. Dell is a big one here. Dell offers professional services. Dell offers engineers to help you design and build your custom setup the way you want to, things like that. If it's a cloud vendor, then you're probably just going to work with the cloud vendor. Unless you're buying a product that ties directly into the cloud, then you're going to work with that products vendor to then use the cloud that you're also going to have to pay for. For example, VMware has a product where you essentially get vCenter in Azure and you manage your VMs like you would anything. So you don't have to know about Azure compute sizes and how to do all the API calls and generate a VM on the fly. You can just kind of point vCenter at your cloud instance and manage your VMs like you're used to. But now you're paying for VMware on top of cloud, when really you could do it all with cloud if you just want to put in the effort. A lot of those kind of tools are there for ease of configuration. Maybe you have a small team and you're like, oh, we need to go cloud, but I only know vCenter. We better buy this product because otherwise we might mess it up. Once you've gotten your RFPs out, you've talked to some vendors and looked at their products and said, oh yeah, maybe that'll fit our needs, or oh no, that's not really going to fit our needs. Then you put it out for bid. The different vendors and the different resellers will reach out and they'll put in information like, hey, we think we're the best for this, we're the best for this. And of course it goes to the best price. That is one way of doing things. And that is the way that I'm used to doing things from where I've worked in the past. If you work in the private sector, you probably have at least one option of just go buy what you want, which is really cool and really dangerous at the same time, because if you're in a private sector job that has had people turn over and turn over and turn over, you might have 15 different vendors involved in your infrastructure, which is kind of a pain in the butt. So, you know, it's nice to have good outlined decision made, like we use this intermediary reseller, we only buy this kind of equipment, we focus on these vendors, they've been the best for us, their support works great, things of that nature. When one other problem that I have to run into is grant purchases now. So if you work with any department or any organization that might write grants and get money, there's a whole other set of rules to purchasing there. They can usually purchase whatever they want to. Sometimes it has to go to the grant supplier after they're done with the equipment, which is really weird, and a lot of people don't know about that. Sometimes you just get to keep it until it dies, which is kind of handy. Grants don't always go through purchasing departments, or if they do, purchasing departments don't realize that maybe those are technology fees, maybe those are personnel fees, maybe they're buying staples from Staples, but really they're buying 15 desktop computers or something like that. And you weren't able to stop them because people along the way didn't know that there are certain steps to these things, and they just didn't know that that step was going to be involved. So that's another thing about purchasing that you have to watch out for, is rogue purchasing. So that's the basic route. You need something, you either just go buy it because you don't have to go through the RFP process, or you have to put it out to bid and do an RFP and explain in detail what you're looking for, who the best bidder is going to be, who's going to win the bid, all these different criteria, which is really nice, but also kind of painful. And then you can also run into situations where no matter what you put out for bid, all the vendors offer the same price. So then you get to pick the one you wanted anyway to begin with, but you had to go through those steps. So let's say you've picked out what you want, you're ready to purchase, you talk to the vendor, you get a quote. Maybe you haven't been kind of shady and working with multiple vendors to try to get the price down, saying, hey Dell, IBM's offering me this, hey IBM, HP's offering me this. Can you meet or beat that? And they'll usually try to do that about one time. And then when you start hemming and hawing them every quote, they'll just stop responding, because they're not there to lose money. They're there to make money. So you're working on your quote. You want to try to get the best price possible. Luckily, where I've worked in the past in higher education, there are tons of higher education discounts, because all of this equipment is used to help kids get through college, and we try to keep costs low and things like that. And if you buy a whole bunch at once, you usually can get a better discount rate. If you have a good relationship with your vendor, they can usually work some stuff out to where certain things cost less, certain things cost more. Maybe you don't need this piece, maybe you do need this piece. They can shift those numbers around a little bit. But remember, every time they take a discount for you, that's sales numbers that they're losing, which means they're going to try to get it back somewhere else down the line, whether that's through renewals or professional services or warranty support requests, things of that nature. When you have your quote, think about what you're buying. Do you need warranty and support? Usually yes. Do you need professional services? If it's something you've never worked with, you absolutely should get professional services, because why not? Learn how to put it together the first time from the professionals, and then just don't get professional services anymore. And then how many years of warranty and support do you want to pay for up front? This is where you get into a situation where you can either pay a lot more money up front to cover yourself for, say, 5 years, which is a pretty good turnaround on equipment, or go year to year. But remember that they're probably going to raise your renewal fee costs every year by between 10 and 20% on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. It depends on the vendor, it depends on the product, it depends on if anything crazy has changed, or it depends on what you bought. So if you don't get latest and greatest, maybe you say, well, I want to stay a generation behind. I want to stay with something that I know is stable and comfortable to use, and people have it in the field. I'm not looking to be bleeding edge or anything. Then they'll be like, cool, we can get you a discount on that because we're trying to get rid of that equipment and only have the bleeding edge stuff. How much warranty and support do you want? Say 5 years up front if you absolutely can. If you can't, then they're going to go, well, since this is 2 generations old, we don't make these parts anymore, so it's going to cost more for us to get parts from OEM, etc., etc. And then you have to deal with that cost at a later date. So it's either deal with the cost now or deal with the cost next year and the year after and the year after, and expect it to consistently keep going up. Now, what's really cool about that part of purchasing is after you've purchased your initial purchase and warranty and replacement and professional services, you can usually go to third-party warranty support. Now, a lot of people might not want to do this. They might not feel comfortable with it. I've done this and I really like it, specifically for things like tape libraries and equipment that's long in the tooth but still doing the job. So the example is, we used to have an IBM tape drive where I worked. We used to pay IBM directly for maintenance and support for that tape drive, and we'd had it for about 10 years by the time I was with it. And we'd upgraded the drives in it, but we hadn't really upgraded the enclosure because it's just a giant tape library. As long as you keep it clean and you keep maintenance up on it, then it just runs forever. It's great. But IBM was charging us thousands and thousands of dollars in warranty and support for this product that we put in maybe 1 or 2 tickets a year for a bad drive to be replaced. So we found that there were third-party warranty support places for things like this, and they were going to charge us a couple $100. And really, they just said, it's no big deal. We know you're going to be changing out tape drives. We keep tape drives all over the country, so you should have a replacement tape drive in 24 hours. If you want to upgrade, we sell newer tape drives than you have. We can get you the licensing and put it all in, and it's a fraction of the cost. Now, how do they do this when IBM can't do that? IBM can do that. They just choose not to because they're catching everyone who's willing to just keep agreeing to pay the IBM bill without ever really questioning it. A lot of vendors will do this in purchasing. They will sell you something up front, make it a really good deal, and it'll look great. And if you don't pay attention every year when you're renewing it, do we still need this? Are we still using all these features? Did we get justification out of this purchase we made? They're going to keep sending you the renewal, hoping that you just agree to pay it so that it's one less thing on your plate. And they definitely don't like to make it easy for you to understand every line item on a renewal quote, or a purchasing quote for that matter. You can get purchasing quotes that will be full of information about power cables and DIMMs, and because they won't sell it all as one piece, because you said you want this generation processor and you need 512 gigs of RAM. The base model one comes with 64, so we're going to have to sell all the DIMMs separately. Then you got to pick out your hard drives, and if you buy your hard drives after the fact, the price is going to be higher than if you buy them on the initial purchase. All of these little catches make them money, which is what they're supposed to do. They're a company. But if you are diligent with what you're doing and pay close attention to your line items and all of that stuff, and keep track of all of that, you will have a very well laid out purchase. So you've done your due diligence, you've done your RFPs, or you've picked your vendor, you're good to go, you've sat through all the sales pitches, you've decided what to buy, you get your quote, time to pay it. You send it off to your purchasing department, they kick off a PO, they send that to the vendor. Once the vendor gets the PO, then you get your equipment. Sounds easy, right? Well, let me tell you, sometimes you kick off this PO and purchasing says, why are you buying this? After you had gone through months and months of building an RFP and a bid and all this, they have to do their due diligence and verify all of this and make sure you have money in your account and make sure that it's a justifiable cost, even though you know it's a justifiable cost. And it can be really frustrating sometimes, but you just have to kind of go through the motions and do the paperwork, do all of the cross your T's and dot your I's and all of that, and just keep pushing through. Because then at the end of the day, your professional services come in, maybe they do a rack and stack. Maybe your professional services cloud helper comes in and says, here's how we get started in Azure or AWS. You can build your VMs this way and you can track your billing this way. You can set billing limits over here. Pay attention to these people, record every conversation you can with them if possible, because this is literally them doing the work and training you how to do the work. Take advantage of this. Record every professional services session you can. If they want to come on site, that's cool because they can show you how to do all the cabling, take photos. You know, if they just want to do Teams calls, Zoom meetings, WebExes, blah, blah, whichever one they want to do, record it. Say, hey, I want to record this for personal use in our infrastructure, because when we want to add more of this stuff, we don't want to have to call you again. We want to be able to do it ourselves. And they'll kind of like this because that means that you're willing to dedicate the time to learn their product, which means you may be willing to become a champion for their product, which is a really big deal for a lot of vendors, is to get the customers talking about their product and how good it is, so that they don't have to make as many sales calls, so that they don't have to, you know, kind of work on so many people. They can get, you know, I always like to trust reviews from people who have used the equipment, not reviews posted on the vendor's website that say, hey, you know, this big Fortune 500 company uses our product, you should too. Let me talk to somebody that's my size that is using the product, and let me find out what's good and what's bad about it, because there's going to be negatives to no matter anything you buy. There's always going to be something wrong. Here lately, for a lot of folks that have dealt with purchases, it has been a great first year, and then year 2, 3, and 4 are horrendous as far as support is concerned in renewal. Dealing with the renewal process is always a pain in the butt, but that's purchasing. You always want to do as much work as possible up front so that you get a good product when it arrives. You don't want to get suckered in by, well, this price is just so good, we should buy it. That usually means it's something that they're trying to completely get rid of and is probably garbage for whatever they're selling it for. So ignore those. Don't go in on the first sales pitch. Listen to every vendor. Make sure they're willing to listen to what you want out of your product and what needs you need to have met, and then check the internet. Go to Reddit, get on YouTube, Google search other universities that say they use this stuff. Find their IT folks, shoot them an email and say, hey, I heard you guys are using VMware for your virtualization. Is there somebody there I could talk to? Because we're considering it, and I'd really like to get a list of pros and cons. You have to do this work. You absolutely have to do this work. It's not fun. It takes time, but it's a very important part about being a system administrator. And yeah, that's purchasing. I gave you a whole bunch of information. I feel like I gave it to you a little too fast, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. I want to give a big shout out to our Patreon. Thank you very much for that. And if you want to join the Patreon, the link is available on the YouTube channel and it will be in the description below. And we'll see you in the next one.